Wake up, the new AAA gaming experience has dropped. We don't usually get big games around this time of year, but this summer we have 3 heavy hitters: Street Fighter 6, Diablo 4, and Final Fantasy 16. Now today we're focusing on Final Fantasy, and I've never actually played one before. So this review is coming from the perspective of a complete noob.
It's only my 3rd day out here, I don't know.
The Sony State of Play is what originally got my attention for this game, and my biggest takeaway at that moment was the combat. It just looked so smooth and action-packed, and that's what made me excited. Then the demo for this game dropped, and oh my lord, when I tell you this was the best demo I've probably ever played.
Oh, this a game!
So boom, right? I decided to shoot my shot and apply for a press copy of this game.
Bryant for the win! Bang!
Square Enix sent me a review copy of Final Fantasy 16. Big shout out to them for that, but that does not exclude them from criticism. So let's kick things off by talking about the story. Now, this entire video won't have any spoilers, so you don't have to worry about that, but what I was worried about was if this storyline was even going to be interesting. I'm not really the biggest fan of medieval themes, but luckily the characters of this story made this engaging. Just from playing that demo, I was following the story way more than I expected, and I will say there are definitely some boring parts. I have a pretty long attention span, but this game also has a lot of cutscenes, and they are not short. Some of them can be pretty interesting and action-packed, and others not so much. But the real problem is the balance between cutscenes and actual gameplay. It kinda kills the pacing when you watch a cutscene for a few minutes, walk a few steps, and then another cutscene plays. With this being a pretty long game, it can be kinda draining. It took me about 40 hours to finish on my first playthrough, which includes the main story. I did all the important side quests and a few side bosses. So if you don't have the patience to stick it out during the dry parts, this might not be for you. In terms of side quests, it can get pretty repetitive. The only side content worth doing, in my opinion, are those marked with plus signs. This lets you know that the reward is very important. They do have some lore-based side quests which are pretty cool, but the format usually ends as a fetch quest. And speaking of lore, you can actually get detailed info in-game about pretty much everything in the story. But overall, I enjoyed the storyline for the most part. Now we can talk about what really got me here: the gameplay and the design. Starting off with the obvious, the graphics are amazing. The level design is beautiful and it features different type of environments. I really just like the overall art style and even the animations for your special abilities. The particle effects are over the top, I will say, but it looks cool. The only thing that sucks is the photo mode. You can't take full advantage of how great everything looks because of how bare bones photo mode is. Hopefully in the future they add more options like changing your pose, facial expressions, and having filters. I know it's a small nitpick, but games like Spider-Man and God of War do have better photo modes. But besides that, the levels give you just enough. It's a semi-open world, which thankfully gives this game a linear approach. You can still fast travel to old levels and find new paths and side quests, which is dope, but since this is an action RPG, of course you have your standard skill tree. It gets more branches as you progress through the main story, and each ability has a video showcase and a description that explains everything, and the ability points used for upgrading are earned after every fight. You can also respec your points at any time, which allows you to try out all the abilities if you want. Overall, it's very noob friendly, and they even have perks you can put on to make the game even easier and more accessible. I personally didn't even die during my first playthrough, so the difficulty is already pretty low to begin with. I wish they would have allowed you to play the game on a harder difficulty from the beginning, but unfortunately you have to beat the game to unlock that. However, the combat is still fun and action-packed regardless of difficulty. You have your standard attack with your sword, you have magic attacks, and then special attacks from your selected icon form. More layers of combat are unlocked as you progress through the story, which keeps things fresh. You can put together some crazy combos when you find out what really works. And there's even a training area built solely for this reason. It allows you to practice and even replay entire sections. And when replaying these sections, you can choose to do it in arcade mode, which gives you a ranked based on your performance and score. The type of gear you can craft and purchase becomes more accessible also as you progress through the main story, and that means you're almost always prepared for every boss as long as you keep up with your upgrades. And the boss fights are easily the best part of this game. The cinematic quick time events during these boss fights is peak gaming. You can also hunt down side bosses, which are called beasts. And you don't really have a deep storyline with these beasts, but it gives you an excuse to get yourself into more combat. Each beast also gives you rewards, and one of those rewards is renown. Renown can be used to unlock different tiers of special rewards. So there's always a reason to do side content if you want. And on top of that, it gives you more time to listen to the fire soundtrack in this game. From the battle music to simply walking around, it sets the tone perfectly. The voice acting is really good. It's just another important ingredient that makes the epic and sad moments hit that much harder. The only thing I did notice with all these voice lines is that some of them are out of sync with the character's mouth. It isn't super distracting, but you will see it during these cutscenes. But other than that, the only other glitch I ran into would be like a few frame drops during like intense graphical moments. So basically boss fights, even in performance mode. It's also been reported that Final Fantasy XVI has been causing some PS5s to overheat. I personally didn't have this problem, but I just thought I would mention it as a warning. But all in all, I will say that this is a great game in my opinion. I enjoyed it as my entry into the Final Fantasy series. I did also forget to mention that you don't need to play any of the other games to understand this one. Each Final Fantasy has its own unique story from what I've heard, so now I'm looking forward to giving some of the other ones I've heard good things about a try. I would suggest that you play the entire demo to see if you would want to buy this game. It gives you a pretty good idea of what you're getting into for the most part, but it's definitely in the game of the year conversation without a doubt. We still got a whole bunch of crazy games dropping later this year, so it's definitely going to be interesting to see who takes the final game of the year title. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this review. Hopefully it helps somebody give this game a chance, and hopefully we can get some DLC. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.